They gain that confidence in themselves and be able to be assertive when needed to and speak, take charge of a situation, and lots of great valuable life skills that transfer into your professional life. It's a way to stay involved in the game and make a bit of cash as a teenager and that type of stuff.
Welcome to episode 302 of Alberta Dugout Stories, the podcast. I'm Joe McFarland. All eyes are on the MLB postseason, which has provided some excellent baseball and even better drama. The two ALDS and NLDS series have been phenomenal to watch, and we can't wait for the championship series and then, of course, the World Series. The big story for the last couple of months here in Alberta has been Eric Sabrowski, who made his MLB postseason debut for the Cleveland Guardians in Game 3 Wednesday, and he continues to impress, going an inning and a third of shutout ball, allowing no hits and one walk while striking out 2-0
Detroit. It'll be Eric Sabrowski, first out of the Cleveland bullpen, 26-year-old Canadian, and his first appearance in this division series, Jeff.
Yeah, low 90s fastball, but his best pitch, that sweeping curveball. It's been one of the best curveballs in the league, .83 average.
Only 12 and 2/3 big league innings under his belt. A swing and a miss, nasty slider. Sabrowski gets Colt Keith for out number one.
Man, what a beautiful pitch right there.
Played right before the trade deadline. So all these new players in this mix. Swing and a miss. He struck him out with a curveball. Dandy, too. Back-to-back strikeouts with a runner at second base. And now 2 men are gone here in the fourth.
Well, good job. He hadn't shown him that yet. It had been that fastball, I think one slider, and then right here throws that slow curveball. You see it 80, good depth to it.
Big moments and throwing strikes.
Man, they can spin it. Look at that curveball right there. I mean, that's
key. He deals, and Meadows in the air to left field. Wynn carries that back. This time Quan has it measured. And so Sabrowski will give the ball to his skipper.
Cleveland ultimately fell 3-0 in the contest to Detroit, allowing the Tigers to take a 2-1 series lead. Cleveland did tie things back up on Thursday, so we'll see what happens in the fifth and deciding game on Saturday. Action in the Arizona Fall League is underway, and we are keeping tabs on Dogs Academy alum and Lloydminster native Justin King, as well as Vauxhall Academy product Wesley Moore, who have yet to make appearances. They are both coming off solid seasons in AA with Miami and Philadelphia, respectively. Congratulations to a pair of Albertans who've been named to Baseball Canada's junior national team Dominican Fall Instructional League camp roster. Easton Couture of Vauxhall Academy and Tay Thierman of Dogs Academy have cracked the lineup, as have fellow Dogs products Tim Piazantine, Max Poirier, and William Labonte. Speaking of Poirier, congratulations to the episode 299 guest on committing to the University of Miami. The Dogs Academy hurler, who was born in Saskatchewan and raised in BC, has had a crazy year playing with Baseball Canada's junior national team and the Canadian Future Showcase, among other big events. We actually just posted a new story on Poirier on AlbertaDugoutStories.com and SaskatchewanDugoutStories.com. A couple of other Alberta players have announced their commitments in the last week. Caden Coldwell of Vauxhall Academy is heading to the University of Mary, while on Thursday it was announced AHP Academy product and episode 298 guest Miguel Tetro is heading to Cloud County. It is commitment announcement season, so don't forget to tag us in your social posts, and we'll make sure to share the news both on social and here on the show. A commitment of a different kind is Dogs Academy and Edmonton Riverhawks alum Michael Yusupchuk is heading to the Cape Cod League next summer. The junior national team star and just joined Missouri State hurler is set to play for the Cotuit Kettleers. The Canadian Baseball Network has begun introducing its all-college teams, starting with the third squad. It featured 4 players who were either born in Alberta or trained here, including Hayden Dow, Tom Poole, Cleary Simpson, and Dmitry Shikako. More announcements will be made in the coming days, and yes, we will be returning with the annual ADS all-college team coming up a little bit later on in the fall. A tip of the cap to former Okotoks Dogs infielder Greg Cullen on his retirement. The Rochester, New York native spent the 2017 summer in the WCBL, then had a great year at Niagara before getting drafted by Atlanta in 2018. He was then sent to Baltimore and made it up to AAA in 2022 and 2023, but didn't end up playing in 2024. And some sad news from the baseball world is pitching great Louis Tiant has passed away. The 3-time MLB All-Star was a 25-year pro, and interestingly, he was the starter for the opposition positioned Portland Beavers in the first ever Edmonton Trappers game in Portland back in 1981. Our thoughts are with all who knew and loved Louis Tiant, who was 83. On this week's show, we are going to do something a little different. We've become accustomed to having 3 or 4 guests on the show, but every so often we get a guest who has some stories to tell. And such is the case with Kris Hartley, a longtime baseball umpire, hockey referee, volleyball coach, sports enthusiast, and teacher, has been recognized as this year's Mitch Ball Memorial Award winner as the Western Canadian Baseball League's Umpire of the Year. Not only was it a great opportunity to chat about some of his highlights this season and during his entire career, but also to talk about being an umpire and the hope to get some more former players, especially catchers, to give it a try. Here's our great conversation with Kris Hartley. Kris, thanks so much for joining us here on the show.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
So let's start here. Kris Hartley, WCBL Umpire of the Year. How does that sound now that you've got a little bit of time to soak it all in?
Yeah, it's still, in my mind, I don't deserve it. Like I said, there's lots of great umpires in this league that, could definitely be deserving. There's a few names that I felt definitely were deserving of it when sort of an email went out to some of us on the umpire committee for the league for nominations and stuff like that. And so I was really surprised and obviously honored, humbled that the league and some of the individuals that decided to nominate myself thought of me, I guess. Like I said, it's anytime you're recognized by some of your peers and by obviously the league and teams that you service by providing a service on the field as an umpire. It's obviously great to be recognized because let's be honest, officials don't always get positive recognition out there. It comes with the territory of being an official.
Absolutely, it does. Now, I mean, the award itself is very cool because it's named after Mitch Ball. I know you knew him in your travels. How special is it to receive an award in his name?
Huge honor. When I first came to Alberta back in 2014, when I relocated from British Columbia, I obviously got to know Mitch. Mitch was based out of Lethbridge, was fairly well known and recognized as an elite umpire, having represented Canada internationally and was involved with Baseball Alberta on the provincial umpire committee. And so we got to obviously cross paths and just a gentle giant, I guess, for lack of a better word. He was he would kind of picture himself as the A&W root beer kind of bear mascot kind of thing. And that was there's lots of people out there that have shirts that they made up kind of in his honor after he passed away a couple years ago during COVID and stuff like that. So, definitely lots of phone conversations, lots of collaborating to help improve officiating, umpiring in the province of Alberta and in the WCBL as well with Mitch. So anytime you have an award that I'll receive at the league meetings in December with his name on it is obviously a huge honor. So.
Absolutely. Now, you kind of touched on it a little bit, but take us into some of those conversations that you would have had with him back in the day. Like, what does he bring to the table? I'm not just talking about being an umpire, but just as a human being. You mentioned the friendly giant piece, but what was it like being in the room with him?
Yeah, I don't know of anyone that said a bad word about Mitch. He was accepting of everyone, friendly towards everyone, gave everyone respect. Just again, some of the stories, his personality, his jovial self, obviously when we're on the field, he's got a job to do, he was business, he took care of business, but he also did it in a fairly friendly way that wasn't demeaning or negative towards the other participants. And, I think that was recognized by all players, coaches and stuff like that. And, we would have those conversations about game management and, on the drives homes, he'd be going from, say, Medicine Hat to Lethbridge, and I'd be coming from Brooks to Calgary or something like that. And, we'd be chatting on the drive home about, what happened in the game tonight or how you could handle this situation or, various ideas and, different things. And then, of course, when you work with him on the field, lots of mentorship and great discussions, in the room afterwards or between innings. Out in the field and stuff like that, if we'd get together as base umpires and stuff like that. So yeah, it was, like I said, always a great opportunity to be around him. And sorely missed, that's for sure.
Going back to the award now and reading through some of the awards that some of the words that Akil had mentioned in giving the award to you, and two that really kind of stuck out to me were consistency and level-headedness. Like it seemed as though there was a lot of people around the room who were talking about that aspect of things, and just the fact that they knew what they were getting out of you as an umpire, game in and game out. How tough is that when you're doing as busy of a schedule as you do in the WCBL?
I think, it's something that as individuals, as officials, we all strive for, obviously, is, like we all have our day jobs. Very few of us, the league does hire a couple of full-time individuals for the summer that, they're either retired or they're, take a couple months off from their jobs because they have that flexibility to, come to the league. But, for most of us, we work a day job and then we leave our day job and go to the ballpark. And, whether it be, for myself, I did a lot of games this year in Sylvan Lake, Okotoks, Brooks, just because of my job. Didn't allow me to travel further, but in years past, I would go everywhere from Fort McMurray to Weyburn and all points in between. Your job is to set everything aside. Your work, your personal stuff, whatever it is, and because you got a job to do for those next 3-4 hours type thing. I would tell people over my officiating career and other sports and stuff that for me, my officiating is like a stress relief. I guess you show up at the ballpark at 5:30, 6 o'clock for a 7 o'clock start or 7:05 start, and you're getting home at 11 o'clock, depending on, or later, depending on how much travel time you have. You're okay for those 3.5 hours. My job is to focus on the ball game and facilitate it for the players and stuff like that, and do your job to the best of your ability. And you need to check everything at the door or at the parking lot, and do your job appropriately. And obviously, it's an emotional game. We all know that. No matter what you're going to do, you're probably going to frustrate or annoy 50% of the people that because the call's going against their team or against them. So your job is just to ultimately facilitate it so that the players play fair and safely based on the rules of baseball, and do the best job possible. So, that's one of the mantras or the goals that I always have when I step on is, all right, I got a job to do here. Let's focus and, do it to the best of my ability.
Mm-hmm. Looking back on the season that was, I've said it a few times, is that it felt like it was one of those years where every team had the ability to beat every other team on any given night. Is that something that you notice as an umpire? Is that the quality of play and the quality of competition, and how close the margin of error seemed to be this year?
Yeah, definitely. I feel this year especially, compared to I've been in the league for 10 years now, and there's some years where in the past, you definitely, you go into the game expecting one team to dominate the other and stuff like that. I felt like this year, not as much, especially I didn't see a lot of the East Division teams.
Mm-hmm.
Only a few of them when they made their trips through Alberta. But definitely even over the last 2 or 3 years, I think it's gotten closer, more parity. And yeah, I'd agree with the fact that, any given night, someone could have beat everyone. And even, if I look back at my playoff series, I did a couple games with Sylvan Lake and Brooks, Lethbridge and Okotoks I did in round 2. And then obviously Moose Jaw and Okotoks in the finals. You would think on paper, Sylvan Lake, who kind of ran away with kind of, their record was pretty high compared to Brooks. But, at one point, even I think it was game 2 in Brooks was up 2-1 in like the 8th inning, right,
Mm-hmm.
on Sylvan Lake. And, Sylvan Lake was able to squeak it out and, win that game type thing, right? So it's, I'd see definitely there's a little bit more parity, which was great, obviously, because it's enjoyable when it's good ball as well, right? That the intensity picks up and you got to be even that much sharper.
I'm glad you went there, because I was going to ask you exactly that. Does that put the onus on you, because you know that every call is going to be have the microscope on it?
Yeah, I think ultimately, as a sports official and as a baseball umpire specifically, we're in a reactionary business. As an official, we have to react to what happens in front of us. It's not like we use our game sense and our game knowledge and you can anticipate certain things. Oh, there might be a bunt situation here, or you might have this, or expectations, right, or potential double play. So you're preparing before the pitch has even occurred about, okay, if this happens, this is where I'm going. This is where I'm going to, try to get to for positioning wise, what I have to be aware of, yada, yada, yada. And I think there's a little bit of pressure there, obviously. And the closer the game, obviously, I think it's natural that everyone sort of, gets a little bit more upbeat or uptight. And they have to, really bear down. And, over the years, through various courses and various clinics and stuff like that, you learn strategies on how to deal with that, whether it be, even Baseball Alberta, we've brought in a sports psychologist or sports performance coach to talk with some of us at a national clinic a couple of years ago. And we pull some of those little nuggets of information out of that session to use in a practical sense on the diamond, right, in the moment. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Looking back on the season that was, any highlights for you?
Yeah, I kind of referred to it sort of already. I was on the field, obviously fortunate enough to be on the field for game 1 and 3 of the league finals between Moose Jaw and Okotoks. And, game 3, I was the second base umpire where, the ball was hit out to center field, and I went out in the bottom of the ninth and to signal a potential catch, no catch, and it ended up being the home run. That was the walk-off. So I'm halfway out to the fence, probably a good 300 feet from home plate, and get to turn around and look at, again, pandemonium. The bench is clearing from Okotoks side. I think even the hitter, Krausen or whatever, stumbled around first base, got up, went back to make sure he touched first base, and then of course the crowd's going nuts as the home team's winning and won the championship and stuff like that. So that was one that stands out. Even game 3 between Lethbridge and Okotoks, I think it was the 13th inning or 14th inning, we had the walk off with the sort of the bunt squeeze play that Ricky Sanchez laid down, right? And again, just the playoffs were definitely, I think, the best playoffs I've seen in the 10 years that I've been in the league from a competitiveness standpoint. So that was, like I said, probably the highlight for me for sure.
Let's get into your baseball past a little bit here, Kris. You mentioned off air you were born in Edmonton, then you moved out to Chase, BC for a few years, and then you end up back in Alberta here for the last decade or so. But let's go back to the very beginning in here. And how'd you get into the game in the first place?
Like many, young boys type thing, sports were a huge part of mine and my brother's life. And, so we did the baseball thing. We did, I played baseball till I was 12, 13, then flipped over to some fast pitch playing and kind of got out of the athletic, or not the athletic, the playing game around 15, 16 years old. I realized pretty early on that, I wasn't the fastest of foot at the time and not the best hitter. So, it's not a good recipe for success being a ball player, and if that's the case. So I was able to kind of start to officiate a little bit of actual fast pitch softball at the age of 16. I started and was mentored by a phenomenal person who ended up going on to umpire the 2004 Olympics, Kelly Hunter. And so she took me under her wing. And then kind of around 2005, 2006, I was approached by a baseball umpire in Kamloops. I was living in Kamloops, and they're like, hey, you should come do baseball. We need some umpires. And like every sport now, we're all short. And so I said, yeah, let's give it a shot. It's a little bit of a challenge. And so that's when I kind of started the baseball side of things as well as the softball side. And I was fortunate enough to, again, be mentored by some pretty great human beings in the Kamloops area, Brian Carnelli, and Matt Lowndes, and Rob Allen, and a few others. And then obviously throughout BC and stuff that got kind of noticed and recognized. And, definitely a lot of people, Steve Boutang and others, that played a huge part in my development over the years and got me to where I was, with some national championships and a few other opportunities that, sometimes I was just fortunate enough to be in the right spot at the right time. One example of that is 2009 World Baseball Challenge was hosted up in Prince George, and there's 6 teams. Team USA, which is a college team with the Garrett Coles and Trevor Bowers and Yasmani Grandals and Sonny Grays and all those people. With Germany and Bahamas, they're looking for people to volunteer to do the left and right field foul lines. We'll give you a hat and a jacket and a uniform top and go to Prince George for 10 days, but you're not getting paid. And I was like, sure, let's do that, right? I got some relatives that live up there. Let's go up and, just to learn from those, individuals that were actually assigned. We had umpires from the USA and stuff like that. And then about a week before the tournament, I got promoted to home plate umpire for the opening game of the tournament because one of the other umpires unfortunately came down ill and wasn't going to be able to make it. So all of a sudden I'm working the games and getting paid, and I'm actually on the diamond doing the bases and plates and stuff like that. So, I got, again, kind of opportunities that popped in, availability, and then you make the most of it. And, as the rest is history, I guess you call it, right? I was able to do that tournament 3 different times and, worked with umpires from the States and Cuba, and former MLB umpire Ian Lamplew, who was one of the Canadians that has been in the major leagues over the time, and stuff like that. So, you get to learn from those people, and, a lot of the learning happens off the diamond in the hotel rooms or in the dressing rooms over some pops and various stuff like that. So picking their brains and trying to become better, right? So
Very cool.
Yeah.
It's interesting that way, and I'll harken. There's so many different places I could go here, but I want to go here first. I usually ask the athletes, like, were you a multi-sport guy growing up, or were you just all baseball all the time? And I know that you've had kind of the sports nut in a sense, because you've got volleyball, you had hockey, like you've been involved in a bunch of different things. What was it about the officiating side in any sport that made you go, this is cool, like this is something that I can still have that foot in the game kind of thing?
Yeah, definitely. When I first started out as a teenager, it was money. Like most young umpires that we see come through our doors for clinics and stuff like that, it's about, oh, let's get some spending money. It's not a bad little job to, pick and choose your hours. And I don't want to work this weekend. I'm not going to make myself available. Or, hey, I can go and work a tournament and make a bunch of money, right? And stuff like that. But then, as you progress up, and stuff like that, it's the camaraderie definitely is one huge component. The the ability to be front row seat, right? Like, I was a catcher when I did play. So, a pitch coming towards me, tracking the ball to the mitt as an umpire is obviously valuable as a plate umpire. And it's just, you're striving to be perfect, which very rarely ever happens as an official. But you're always striving to do your best and perform to the top of your ability, just like the ball players are trying to do the same thing. So it's a way to stay involved in the game. And like you said, I have been involved in multiple sports as an official or player or coach or whatever you want to call it. And it's all the same, is like trying to do your best and be your best. And, that's why this recognition stuff is, sometimes, appreciated, but it's not something that we look for because, yourself as an individual, whether you did a good job or not. And a lot of times we as officials are the hardest on ourselves. We kick ourselves for when we don't maybe get the call right, or we, didn't get the best positioning. We know when we've, sort of maybe made a mistake and aren't sure. And nowadays with some technology and stuff like that, it's a great opportunity to go back and look at some stuff, and to double check and to learn. I had a great opportunity this past September umpiring the Blue Jays Future Showcase at the Rogers Center. And, the technology that was used by our supervisors, who actually all 3 of them are WCBL umpires, but they've all worked international, whether it be Olympics, Pan Ams, etc., World Baseball Classics. With technology at the Rogers Center, we could see our pitch, our pitch plot, and we could see our, they'd have the iPads, and they'd, kind of screenshot the videos, and then, okay, on the steal, did you get a good position? Did you get, did you have a good look? Did you have a good route for the fly ball to center field? Could you have done something differently? And it's just, again, all ways to make you think and get better, so that you incorporate that into your officiating for future games, right? So technology is a great thing, obviously, from a feedback standpoint. And I know the WCBL is, had some conversations of that with the umpire committee, a handful of us on that, about trying to figure out some ways that we can better that side of our officiating for the WCBL, using some of the technology, maybe with some evaluations or some, word newsletters or whatever you want to call it, video sessions and stuff like that with our whole staff to, again, just provide opportunities to grow and develop our umpires. Because, we have in the WCBL, I think there's close to 80 umpires on staff from multiple provinces and stuff like that. And, some are just getting into the league, and some have been in the league for 20, 30 years when before it was the WMBL, it was Saskatchewan Major, I think it was called, or something way back when. There's guys like that have lots of experience to, pass on and, help develop so that we can give a better product for the players that are spending their summers in the league.
Mm-hmm. I asked this of Brent Redlinski way back when we had him on the show. I feel like it was about a year or so ago, and he had a good chuckle about it. And so I'm curious if you'll indulge us a little bit, because I feel like every ump has maybe that one call or those two calls. They were just like, I got that one wrong, and it sticks with you. And I'm curious, are there those calls in your mind where you look back on and go, oh, I should have known better? Or you look at the video and go, yeah, I was definitely wrong. Do you have those moments?
Not that I can reconcile right now, like a specific one that you're maybe trying to find. I'm sure there is, and definitely has been. Like, we, like I said, we as officials tend to know, like, I didn't have the greatest look at that. I hope I guessed right, or, I hate to say that we guess on the field, but, it's like based on all the material that we have, the vision and stuff like that, is like, yeah, I think this is what I saw. Am I 100% sure or not? Let's check the video afterwards or the live stream afterwards to see it. And there's definitely a couple times in the last 3 or 4 years where, you log in and try and find out, and, just to, oh, great, we did get that one right, or, or some of that, right? And, or you ask your partners after the game or after the inning or whatever, is like, hey, what did you get on that? Did you have what I had? Sometimes coaches come out at you, sometimes they don't, and to question and, and going back to like what you said about some of the words that Akil talked about with, level-headedness and stuff like that. It's like, managers have a job to do, obviously. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they're doing it to spark their team. Sometimes they're doing it because they legitimately have a beef. And I think we as officials are never too high on ourselves that, like if I think I might have screwed it or I might have not had the best look, I'll potentially go get help. But if it's something like a basic out safe call at first base or something like that, where it's like, I'm not going to go to someone who's 100 feet away that doesn't have as much as, mm-hmm. That's my call. I'm going to stick with it, right? Like, so we don't always automatically go, right? But, some coaches would like you to go automatically, right? Mm-hmm. Just because, but it's like, no, like, again, they're looking at something else. I'm looking at this, right? Or whatever it is, right? Like, I'm going to stick with it because I'm 99.9% sure that I got that one right. So I don't need to go for help, right? Mm-hmm. Or, that does that. But if it's like, I didn't get the best position, I may have missed that or may not have seen everything, clearly. Maybe a foot was off the bag or something like that. You know what? Yeah, I'll go get help. I'll go ask. And, we'll go for that. So
it's such an interesting game that way. I was going to say is because you as a hitter, you hit 300 and you're Hall of Famer, right? Whereas you're an umpire and you get 95% of the calls right, and you're still not good enough in the eyes of some of the fans and some of the players. So it's a thankless job. And so I know that sometimes umps can lament on things, go, oh, I could have done that one just a little bit better. And so, like I said, having a little bit of fun with that one. When you look back on all, you and I were talking off air about all the travels that you've had, you've gone to different countries, you've been able to do different kinds of things. You mentioned Canadian Future Showcase as an example. Do you have one or two moments throughout your umpiring or refereeing career where you're just like, you had to even take that step back and go, man, I can't believe I get to do this?
Yeah, definitely. Some of the recent stuff, like I said to you off air, like in July, I got to travel down to Brazil and work a softball world tournament type thing. So again, get free trip down to Sao Paulo and spend, a week down there. And, obviously, that the World Baseball Classic World Baseball Challenge from a baseball side of things, obviously being on the diamond, there's like the Sonny Grays and Garrett Cole, Canada, USA, 10,000 fans watching. And, situation happened where guy from Canada slid into the shortstop at second base and ended up breaking his tibia and fibia, and we get benches clear. And, so you got 60 guys split up, separated by 6 umpires on the diamond. And, it's like the intensity, right? Everyone's mm-hmm. on the top step waiting for that next situation, right? And, because it's just electric. USA, Canada, rivalry on the ball diamond, right? So, some of those things definitely, those opportunities obviously to be around those things and be on the field with, future MLBers or, even when I worked the Tournament 12 back in like 2014 and 2012, which is now the Blue Jays Showcase, we'd have like Lloyd Mosby as our ball boy and Dwayne Ward and some of those guys heckling you, right? And,
Mhm.
it was kind of like, these are the guys you watched on TV when I was growing up as a teenager, in the 90s. And, now they're bringing me baseballs and stuff like that. It's kind of a neat feeling, right? And just obviously being on the Rogers Center is always a great thing. Chance to umpire on the Rogers Center is a huge honor because there's thousands of umpires across Canada that would love to have had that opportunity, in my place, right? So,
Mhm.
but yeah, it's definitely, there's lots of really good things. And just, I think for me, even just the car rides with some of my best buds, that are umpires with me, right? And, the conversations and the relationships that you build is a huge thing.
For sure. You've mentioned a few names over the course of the umpiring career, like the Garrett Coles of the world, and that. Is there one guy or a couple of guys that stand out to you when you first saw them? I mean, these are raw kids when you're watching them for the first time. You even had to go, "Oh, this dude's legit. Like this guy's gonna go places." Are there one or two that really stand out to you as you look back on it?
Yeah, like obviously some of those names that I've mentioned, when they're, throwing high 90s and stuff like that, it's like, all right, like, like that's something that you don't typically see regularly. So that, I had a chance to do some Cuba games as well. So you had, some of those guys that you've seen in the major leagues, on those rosters. And, you assume that, they're probably going to get there, right? Obviously, in hindsight now, because of time overlapping, a lot of that roster of that U.S. team back in 2009, have made it to the show or, at some point, right? And,
Mm-hmm.
and then, Brett Lavery when he was a younger kid in BC when I was umpiring BC. And, from the minors stuff, it's like, yeah, this kid could go somewhere, right? And obviously did. And, others right through the, even you think the Western Canada Baseball League, right? Like Eric Samborski, saw was pitching earlier today against
Mm-hmm.
Detroit, and it's like I remember him, you know, being games when he was throwing for the prospects and whatnot, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, like I said, there's some that you just like, the nailers as well, right? And stuff like that. That is like, yeah, okay, they're pretty good,
They just hit the ball 450 feet. That can't
yeah,
be right.
yeah, yeah, way along farther than I would ever. That's for sure.
Exactly, exactly. We've talked a lot about the highlights. I'm always curious though, especially in this ever evolving game and so much more emphasis on umpiring now. There's a lot more, consternation around because everything is based on analytics now, especially at the major league level. Do you see that trickle down into some of the younger levels, even WCBL and beyond? Is that maybe the biggest challenge you face as an umpire nowadays?
Uh, Yeah, a little bit. Like obviously, it hasn't come down as much. Some leagues that I work in the summer, they'll have like the track man or the pitch thing, and the teams will be like, griping about something, and it's like because they've been relayed the message that that pitch wasn't what you call or whatever it is, right? And it's
Mm-hmm.
like, well, again, stuff of that. So there's some negativity to that side of things, definitely. I think, as an official, some of the challenges obviously is this, the speed of the game. It's picking up. And, like I said, athletes, if you think about the summer goes, right? And, for a lot of these kids, it's their full time job, lack of a better word,
Mm-hmm.
calling it a job. But, that's all they're doing. And they're training year round, they're playing year round and stuff like that. And, we as umpires, we have an off season and, to try and turn it on right away, it's sometimes tough. So there's a little bit more of a, if you try and find opportunities to, you know, communicate with some of the partners in the game and be like, hey, do you mind when you're, doing bullpen sessions in your indoor academy? Is there any way I can get down and see a few pitches or go to the batting cage and, watch
Mm-hmm.
pitches coming in, from behind the mesh or something, right? Like just, again, trying to get some practice yourself. Um, so there's definitely that challenge and, you know, the training side of things. It's trying to better yourself to be as prepared as possible is more and more compared to when I first started, for sure. And it's tougher when you get older and like myself and stuff like that, where you're like, you have a career and family commitments and everything else. So I think ultimately that's the true challenge, is managing all that stuff. And I think a huge shout out to the spouses of the umpires and stuff like that, and the families that lose a lot of opportunities to do stuff because they have other commitments for being on the diamond and stuff like that. So but yeah, it's definitely, like I said, there's challenges for sure. It's, you want to do as well as possible, and we're fortunate enough with the Western Canada Baseball League being a 3 umpire system. It's not ideal. Like 4 umpires, obviously the more ideal. If you look at the major leagues, right, they have 4 and even 6 in the playoffs, right? The less umpires on the field, the more opportunities for mistakes to happen, and because it's just so many options of what could potentially go on, that from a position standpoint, ideal is 4, but then the economics of it, and people that can do the job also become a limiting factor, right? So
I know one of the bigger challenges in sports now is facing the sports parent or the fans, or they're both in many cases. And I know you've also refereed and officiated hockey. And so I'm curious, which set of parents is harder to deal with, hockey parents or baseball parents?
Most of those parents are probably the same. Winter and summer sports, right? The same athletes. No, honestly, I don't know. Again, there's always a few bad seeds in every sport. Whether it be volleyball, hockey, baseball, softball, soccer, any sport, right? There's always a few bad seeds, unfortunately. They give everyone else a bad rep. But ultimately, I think, as a sports officials, at the WCB level and stuff like that, honestly, I get a good chuckle out of some of the chirps that you hear sometimes in some ballparks. You don't let it affect you much, because at this level, it's like, the job that you're doing, whether it's good or bad, and it really doesn't. It's not worth wasting any time or energy on. It's definitely a lot tougher at the minor level with our younger umpires. Heavily involved with Baseball Alberta and Softball Alberta from a training and education standpoint for officials, and we always stress to them that especially the brand new officials, like, yeah, you're going to get yelled at it. Unfortunately, it's part of putting on this uniform, but just understand that they're more so yelling at the uniform than they are yelling at you as an individual, right? It's you're the official, and whoever's wearing that jersey is probably going to get those same comments. It doesn't matter if it's an adult to a kid to whatever it is, but I hope people would start to recognize and realize that, again, without officials, and we've seen it since really COVID hit a few years back, the shortage of officials in all sports, because people realize, well, I'll go do other stuff instead. And with my families and stuff like that, and we lost a huge amount of officials in all the sports that I'm involved in, that we're trying to recuperate and get back up to the levels that we were pre-COVID. And, how do we do that? Well, again, I would encourage some parents and some siblings and ball players would be great, right? More ball players getting into officiating. For me, I was a hockey player and a rep hockey player, and that's why I got into hockey refereeing as a teenager as well, is just because it made me a better hockey player, because I understood the rules a bit more. I understood what I could get away with, or how to use the rule book to my advantage. Like you think about a catcher, right? It's like you get the ball on a bunt or something out in front of home plate, and that runner is running down the first base line in fair territory. Well, throw the ball into the back. Like I've seen catchers who do that, and are like, well, might as well force your hand in calling a batter lane interference for the runner being out of the batter's lane, right, or runner's lane. It's like, again, if you know the rule, use it to your advantage, right? And stuff like that, to get an out or whatever it is, right? And stuff like that, or force the officials to make the proper call, hopefully. But it's, like I said, ball players have that understanding of the game, and, even the NHL, the last handful of years have been on a huge former hockey player push, that if you've played at a high level of hockey, we'll fast track you into the, major junior levels and into the AHL and NHL, because you understand the game, you understand the fitness, the emotions. It makes yourself a lot better than someone who hasn't experienced that from a player's side. So, like I would recommend ball players to consider that when they're finished their playing days, or, like they're no longer doing the college or university level or minor ball level, to pick up and stay involved in the game that way.
I'm glad that you actually went into that recruitment side of things, because I know we focus a lot, and I've asked a few of the fun questions too about the pitfalls of being an official, but at the same time, there's a lot of positives that come away with it. And I'm curious, what's been the most rewarding aspect of being an official, whether it be in baseball, volleyball, hockey, all the different sports you've been involved in?
I'd say the people I've met. Is probably the biggest one. Like, obviously, like I alluded to you off air, like a lot of my groomsmen, when I got married a handful of years back, were umpires, or sports officials that I've officiated with. The camaraderie, the people you meet, and it's not even just officials, right? Obviously, there's really great human beings on the other side, players, coaches, etc. That you cross paths with. It's a small community, sports in general, right? And you cross paths down the road, and how are things, and you catch up, and and stuff like that. But definitely the biggest benefit obviously is being part of that group of people. Obviously being involved in sport, which is always great for your health and for your life, and a lot of great valuable skills, especially for young officials starting out, maybe as a 12-year-old or something like that. I've seen numerous opportunities or situations over my career in some of the sports that I've, help instruct new officials. It's like a young official who just kind of, they're kind of sulking and quiet and stuff like that. And then they take up officiating, and now all of a sudden they walk around with their chest kind of puffed out a little bit. They're a little bit more prouder and, able to communicate with adults, which is a tough thing to do for a 12-year-old. As they gain that confidence in themselves and be able to be assertive when needed to, and speak, and take charge of a situation, and lots of great valuable life skills that transfer into your professional life. It's a way to stay involved in the game and make a bit of cash as a teenager, and that type of stuff. So
Absolutely. The final question we got for you here, Kris, it's one we ask everybody here on the show. What does the game of baseball mean to you?
It's a great question. For me, obviously, it's been a huge part of my life, along with the other sports, but it's something I enjoy. It's enjoyment. It's nothing better than, the crack of the bat, the cheering, the, sunflower seeds even, right? Those, it takes you back to the, the national pastime, right? And, when you think back in, and just the sounds of the ballpark, it's great. The music and stuff like that, it's the whole picture. There's nothing better than the game of baseball, in my opinion.
There's been nothing better than to catch up with you, Kris, and chat about your baseball journey and the award as well. Congrats on that. Congrats on all the success as an official, continued success heading into 2025 and beyond. And again, thanks so much for joining us here on the show.
Thanks for your time, and have a good evening.
Thanks again to Kris Hartley for joining us this week, and thanks to all of you for downloading and listening. If you like this or any other episode, make sure to leave us a rating and review on your app, as those actions help spread the word about ADS, and we couldn't agree more with the sentiment that we need more officials in every sport, including baseball. It's been an uphill battle for a lot of organizations, so if you're passionate about the game and want to make a difference, it's worth connecting with them to get involved. As always, a tip of the cap to our platinum supporters, the Okotoks Dogs, the Western Canadian Baseball League, and Under the Lights Sports and Entertainment for their generosity, which helps us cover costs like web hosting fees and online subscriptions. If you'd like to join our roster of sponsors, head to albertadugoutstories.com/supporters. Until next time, thank you for all of your support online, on social, and on air of Alberta Dugout Stories.